I've got a card if that's.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I don't know if you're, Katie, will you turn your camera on or no?
Yeah, no, really.
Yeah, sure. Let me go ahead and do that, see if you can see me.
Yeah,
let's see you.
we haven't really looked into muscles, but we've been thinking about it. Just not sure where to get started.
Let's see you.
It's pretty exciting.
All right. So it's 12:30, we'll go ahead and kick back off. Feel free to keep eating. We won't hold it against you. I'm gonna keep eating. But I will, we won't waste any time. Shady, you want to go ahead and talk about the next deal and then introduce Kate?
Yeah, I can do that. Let me, and Danielle, am I still sharing my screen?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so let me,
I can see your team screen, but not the, oh, there's the presentation.
okay, so I'm gonna jump to the presentation and then I'll put Katie back up once we have her teed up. Okay, so we have this on the agenda item for every meeting, and it's kind of goes back to what Scott said before, is we're trying to get in a mode where if folks have seed grants in mind that they would like to propose, we're encouraging folks to come in and present them at one of the regularly scheduled meetings, and hopefully before the October deadline hits, because too often times what happens with the seed grant application process is that someone has the idea in the back of their mind and the notice comes out and they feel like they have lots of time to get to it because they get noticed in August. And then, you know, we're all busy and you look up and that October 15th deadline to do the pre-application meeting is starts to bear down on you. And then the first thing that Barbara asks you is, have you talked to your council chairman about this project yet? And the answer 9 times out of 10 is, oh, I need to do that. And it's like, yeah, you're not going to get a seed grant if you don't have a letter of support. So then there's a scramble mark that you'll be in charge of, by the way, to figure out how to get this on the radar and make the pitch. So again, we just try to have an agenda item every time, and folks are free to reach out. I'll have Mark's contact information here, and the other thing we'll even do, and Mark, sometimes you have to do this, is just set up a quick Teams meeting and we'll get a few of the council members on for you so you can make the pitch and they can ask questions and maybe guide you in the direction, you know, where it'll help get you that council support. So these are just the basics. Try to get on the agenda at a future meeting. They are capped at 75,000, but like you said, you know, Mark, that's where that big project that you just mentioned started, and now it's a 50 million plus project that's going to help with drought management and protecting the mussels. So that's a pretty awesome story to tell. We got one here today that Katie's going to talk about that started with the seed grant, and we're hoping that will go forward. But they usually open up in August. You do have to do that pre-application meeting by mid-October, and then the grant itself has to be submitted online by October 31st, and it does need to include the letter of support from the council. There's Barbara's information. She's the contact for the seed grant for EPD. And so I'll pause there. I don't know, Scott, if you had anything that you want to mention on this topic?
No, I would just want to reiterate that mad dash I'm not very fond of, mainly because the council members, if we have any, don't get updated or don't get in on the discussion. I mean, it's very hard to get input on whether it's something that the council wants to do, and I represent the council, I don't just represent myself. And so I hate the mad rush. I don't think if you really want to get, and the other thing that happens is, maybe Shane left that on purpose, lots of times people will wait around and see if there's any seed grants that's been applied for, and if they're not, they feel like it's low hanging fruit, they just jump in at the last minute. Hate that, by the way. So, I don't ask a lot. I ask to try to at least present it to we usually have a meeting right there around the first of that, grant period opening. I ask that they come to the meeting and just present. You don't even have to have your ducks in a row. Just say, hey, this is what we're thinking about. And then I also ask that it actually addresses issues in the plan, if the plan's gonna support it. And on a personal note, I'm not too crazy about the ones that are just like, hey, let me make sure these consultants get paid, and we get another, study done and put on the shelf, so we can say that we've had a study done. I like there to be some item in the grant that addresses issues identified in the water plan that we've spent a long, long time and a lot of the taxpayers' money, identifying. So, that'll be the only thing that I add from a personal standpoint. I'm not saying I won't do those, but you'll have to have a really good project to come to me. And believe it or not, people come the week of the deadline and ask for these letters of support. And that's really difficult whenever the board, the council hasn't had a chance to vet them. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, so we did get two, seed grant applications, and Katie's gonna tell us about hers. And a credit to Katie, I think collectively between myself and Cliff and Scott, we've been marketing Katie for over a year now, so we've been after her to help us with this one. So, thank you, Katie, for helping us, and this will be a continuation of the Lake Beatrice, study, so I'll let Katie tell you about that. And then, Dr. Hawkins, who's done several grants in the past, put one in for education around septic tanks and well system maintenance to protect water quality. I think one of the other things that Dr. Hawkins does is he usually tries to get more than one council to support, and that's really nice, kind of what Mark was saying earlier about we have a lot of shared resources, and also that helps your grant application if you have more than one regional water plant that you're trying to help with implementation on. So with that, I'm gonna put Katie back up on the screen for the folks in the room. Take it away, Katie. Let's hear about your seed grant application for Lake Beatrice.
All right. Hey, y'all. Sorry I couldn't be there in person with my marketing team, Shane, Cliff, and Scott. I was at our son's, or our children's school's Thanksgiving feast. So I don't know what y'all had for lunch, but I had the world's saltiest green beans. Hey, I'm Katie Hill. I'm with the Carl Institute of Government at UGA. I'm public service faculty here, and I've worked for UGA for quite some time now, about 15 years or so. And I'm assuming that everyone in the room is familiar with the Lake Beatrice project. Can I get some nods?
I wouldn't make that
Somebody
assumption.
say-
I wouldn't make that assumption.
50-50, Katie.
Give it the big picture just real quick if you would, or I can do that if you'd rather.
I'll give a very, very big picture, and then if you want to fill in anything else, you go right ahead. So, Lake Beatrice, Fitzgerald, Georgia, is a failed dam that has been around. The dam was constructed sometime in the mid-1800s. Has had some issues with it off and on over the years, and currently is not working, not holding back all the water it could be. If the dam was refurbished, repaired, whatever word you want to use, the water that it holds back in a new Lake Beatrice or a refurbished Lake Beatrice could be used during periods of low flows, during periods of drought where we're not getting enough water downstream. There could be releases from that dam to supplement low flows at some of the nodes downstream. Under a 2020 seed grant, the Army Corps was engaged to see whether or not this was feasible, whether or not the the refurbishment of the dam would actually improve environmental flows downstream. And they said, yeah, you might not get every single last little drop of water that you wanted to in this project, but, you know, it looks like you could do almost all of what you wanted to do to support downstream environmental flows, if you refurbish the dam. The property is in private ownership, and at the time, and it still is, it's been a little unclear whether or not the property owners would want to sell the property. So if you were going to refurbish the dam for environmental flows downstream, to ensure that you're actually going to be able to release the water when you need to, you would, if it was still in private ownership, you would need to have some sort of public-private operations agreement, something worked out, right? Unfortunately, as part of that, and there was supposed to be research done as part of that 2020 grant to address that outstanding question. You know, and dams across the United States are used for purposes like this. How do we do these different models of ownership and operation, from straight public, you know, it's purchased by the local government or some other governmental entity, to wholly privately owned, something in between. You know, what are the different models for actually owning and operating this thing if it ends up getting fixed up and holding back some water? Unfortunately, that part of the project was not completed, and if you don't have that information, you know, like, is it at all possible to do this if the property owners end up not wanting to sell? It doesn't make any sense to spend another penny thinking about this project, right? Because you'd just be throwing. I don't know if the phrase "throwing good money after bad" makes sense here, but it'd be something like that. So Scott, Shane, and Cliff said maybe those, you know, needle-headed academics over at UGA could be good for something, and they gave me a call and said, do you think this is something that you'd be able to do? And I said, yes, sirs. So what I just described, research looking into the different ownership and operations models for dams in the United States, is basically what this project would encompass. So I'd be looking at models like long-term leases, public-private partnerships, purchases, and looking at other types of ancillary kind of on-side tools like conservation easements, restrictive covenants, and other legal mechanisms that might come into play under these different ownership models. And so there'll be a period, if the Sea Grant is awarded, which it's escaping me right now when we hear about that. We just submitted at the end of October, and I can't recall off the top of my head when we were supposed to hear.
I think it'll be
probably
January or February is typical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. There will be, you know, the research and writing phase of this project, and I'll come down there and meet with, you know, Scott, go and meet the property owners, because, you know, that's an important step. I'm not just going to sit here in my office and do this. I need to come down and actually talk to people. Write a report, and then once y'all get the report and have time to digest it, I would then be available for some time after that. If there were still lingering questions, you know, if you thought it was incomplete for some reason, if there was new information where we needed some more research, I would be available again after that first draft of the report was done. So that's the idea. We'll hear about it maybe January, February, and if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them. Also, I'd like to say I love Gary Hawkins, and I also love septic systems and septic system policy. So if that's something that y'all are interested in, that's an area of expertise for me. So just, you know, keep me in mind if that's ever something that you're interested in. So any questions about this Lake Beatrice secret?
Any questions for Katie? I think the other thing I was going to add in, Katie, is EPD did help with some of the modeling, and the Corps did confirm, like Katie said, that It would we knew from the initial modeling they did, it wouldn't cover all the low flow gaps. And, you know, we try to designate, there are different management practices depending on the setting and the situation, right? So when you get into a drought, like a serious drought, like, you know, you were showing us, Mark, with the map, there's a lot of other things that happen. So it wouldn't probably cover the longer duration, but we did find out that it would cover half of the shorter duration gaps. So it would address over 50% of the shorter duration gaps, which were that 1 to 7 days. And then I think the core, and this is probably a little dated, but it definitely has, you know, even if it was off by a factor of 2, I think the Corps' estimate, Scott, was what, $2.5 million to
Yeah,
bring?
2.5, that's for the full project.
Right, and that included, you know, obviously bringing it up to modern day standards in regards
Yes,
to how you
that's
have a dam
Full dam replacement.
geotechnically engineered, constructed, have an emergency overflow for high flows and things like that.
So we know what category.
Yeah, sorry,
That would be, I was just, Clete asked the Corps about the coordination with you say dams, and you know.
Yeah,
what's
it's
that?
not gonna be categorized as a high hazard dam. So,
would it be cat 2 or is it size, we know?
that I'm not sure of. I think there's a
The full one,
designation.
I think, is category 2, but I mean, the issue with doing the full dam is it backs up water onto places that I don't think we can back water onto. I.e., number 1 would be a Georgia Power substation. I'm not saying Georgia Power would be willing to move the substation out of the water, but I would almost guarantee you from past experience, that would be a very short conversation for them. They don't do anything except what they want to do. So, first of all, the Corps has been great. And the first proposal was the full scale of what was possible to do. So that included a very large dam. And it was $2.5 million. But we'll have to scale that back because of those issues. But that's fine, because you scale your effectiveness down. But it may change, you know, what's required of that. Because it made a turn. It wasn't, right now it's just a straight dam, and with that proposal, it made a turn, and there was an earthen berm that went out and all that, you know. So it's actually, will affect the design of the dam.
So we need to include our safety program with all that.
The other thing I will say, in relation to like what Mark was saying, we're not doing any surface water switching or any of that kind of stuff, but, you know, this kind of project that puts more surface water downstream and more times would open those folks up that, you know, downstream, that there used to be surface water withdrawals down around Nashville, Georgia, not Tennessee, Nashville, Georgia. There used to be some surface water. I think those are gone, but a lot of that's gone because that creek is inconsistent. So one of the things we would be doing is making that creek more consistent with headwater flows out of that reservoir. So you never know what that leads to, and that's the reason why I like these kind of projects. And it addresses a direct issue in our plan. I will mention that. Again.
Anything else from you, Katie?
No, I don't see it. It's direct issue in the plan. This won't be a plan that sits on a shelf. I'm not a consultant getting money for nothing.
Great.
And I think that's Mark Pastor's job talking about. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Katie.
Yeah, so thank you very much,
Thanks.
Katie, and Mark and Scott and Cliff will keep you in the loop on, you know, when the announcements are made. Like I said, I think it should be January or February.
Awesome. Thank y'all so much. I hope y'all have a good day and a happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, so let's see if I can do this. I'm trying to cursor. Back over here. And then jump back over to the presentation. See, I need to find the one that starts on the existing slide instead of at the beginning. All right, so